best shot at scoring a defensive touchdown this week?
I believe that you are stuck between one of possibly two, maybe, defenses. I think the Steelers have a great shot at one. I feel like they are locked down, shut down in their own home field. The other one that I will throw out there very, very quickly is the Rams, man. I feel like they have a good shot for a defensive touchdown this week because, oh, dear God in heaven, we know Jameis Winston just loves to throw it to the opposite colored jersey week after week. So, yeah, if Aqib Talib can get one of those targets that is destined for Mike Evans and take it to the house and have to rip off nobody's chain because he's doing an end zone dance, then yeah, I could see it.
Right. Ripping off the chains, just straight mugging people. I'm glad you
tearing down those W's, man. Just
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Just ridiculous. I still can't believe that was actually a thing that actually happened in the NFL. But I'm glad you say you just threw me a huge alley-oop, saved the Chargers for me. I will dunk that and just say they're playing the Dolphins. So we always start whoever's playing the Dolphins. But for real, a non defense that's playing the Dolphins. I'll throw Carolina out there. I think Carolina
I like that call.
Might have potential for a defensive touchdown. And the only reason I asked this question, of course, it seems like when we look at those top 5 ranked defense scores for fantasy every week, it's always whoever got in the end zone pretty much, or had a punt return, or or just had a boatload of sacks. And I think Carolina, with the addition of Brian Burns, they've really stepped up the pass rush this year. They do have an increased propensity to get some sacks here, especially with this offensive line. Yes, they did add Laramie Tunsil, but they could still get 4 or 5 sacks this game. Could see a sack fumble taken to the house, or something of that nature. So I'll throw Carolina out there this week. And moving on to our very last segment here, Dick, got a couple real quick running back questions from our fellow super fans. First up, James, our Texans super fan, just wants to ask about Chris Carson. I heard some sound bites earlier this week that kind of want me to steer clear of Melvin Gordon, some things that Anthony Lynn said, but I also heard some sound bites about Pete Carroll telling everyone that Chris Carson is going to pretty much get thrown right back in the role. We know that Rashad Penny is still kind of banged up as well. I mean, do we have to kind of trust Chris Carson going forward, right? I mean, the dude never had a fumbling issue in college, but suddenly it's just an issue in 2019. What are your thoughts? Are you with me on that?
No, I can't, man. I don't trust anything Pete Carroll sells. I don't have to hear his audio to know that it's just total crap. I look, when you spend a first round pick on a running back, and then you don't play him, that just says absolute total Mad Hatter liar to me. Look, Carson putting the ball on the ground religiously is very concerning to me, especially if Penny is active. I want nothing to do with Chris Carson this week. I think that it could be a split backfield, and we saw this from Carroll. He might come out in the media and say that he believes in Chris Carson and Chris Carson's his guy, and we're going back to Chris Carson, and all these different things. But what he did in that game is, after he put the ball on the ground again, Carson found splinters in his butt. He got sat on the bench, and C.J. Prosise, the zombie corpse of C.J. Prosise, got more run after that moment than Chris Carson did. So while
C.J. Prosise is alive. He is actually alive.
While Carroll says all these things, I do not trust Chris Carson. I will not play him in DFS. I will not touch him in my season-long leagues. I don't want any part of it. I get the matchup is absolutely juicy and amazing, but I don't want it, man. I don't want any part of it because I'm not playing Sneaky Pete kind of coach talk. The guy lies through his teeth religiously, and I can't trust it, and I can't trust him for my fantasy lineups.
That's fair. That's very fair. The only reason that I'm willing to plug him in is, in one league that I own Chris Carson. I mean, I have no choice. I'm a little thin at running back, so I have to kind of roll him out there as my RB2. He's shown kind of a tendency to not really care where he spends his draft capital. But to be honest, to kind of further back your point, if this is the week that you were going to move forward with Rashad Penny, I mean, this is the perfect opportunity. You have a built-in excuse. With Carson, having a little bit of issue there with the ball control or the ball security. So definitely can understand why this could be the beginning of the end of Chris Carson as well. So definitely understand that. Last question we have is from technically it is from Nick, our chief super fan, but he wants to make it abundantly clear that he's asking for a friend. Is Jordan Howard for real moving forward? I noticed you had a pretty entertaining tweet earlier that he's the new fantasy homewrecker.
God, dear God in heaven. No, Jordan Howard is not a thing. If anybody has Jordan Howard, please trade him now. Please use this as your opportunity to trade him now. The Packers are the very bottom of the worst. Mike Pettine for the Packers has come out and said, I do not care how much we give up to opposing running backs. I do not care that we give up rushing yards. It does not matter. We care about the pass. That loss versus the Eagles is more about the Packers' inability to do anything in the red zone and to as many times as they want to feed Davante Adams the ball. He still did not get any touchdowns, which my DFS and Showdown lineups lament. I do not believe in Jordan Howard. He is not a thing. If you have him, trade him. If not, you hold him until you can trade him. And I am sorry that you even burned a roster spot on him. I will say that.
It's been just ever since Doug Peterson has been in Philly, the whole backfield situation has been infuriating on a weekly basis. So definitely nothing changing there. I think that's probably a good spot to call it quits. And that is going to do it for us here on this week 4 edition of the Next Fan Up podcast powered by Fantrax. Of course, wanted to thank you for stopping by here for some Saturday morning fantasy football. And thanks to our guest, Derek Brown, a.k.a. Dbro. You can find him at Dbro_FFB on Twitter. Thanks again for stopping by the show, my friend. Always great talking fantasy with you.
Josh, look, this was an amazing time. It's always great sitting down, chopping it up, answering questions with you, man. We got to do this more often. Thank you so much for having me. This is an amazing, amazing show y'all have got going.
Oh, absolutely. And a quick reminder, if you guys like what you heard, you can subscribe to us wherever great podcasts are heard. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. You can find us putting out the feed on Stitcher as well. The superfans and our other Fantrax friends would certainly appreciate your subscription. If you are already a subscriber, review us, rate us. You can email us nextfanup@gmail.com. Tweet us at NFU Podcast and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/NFU Podcast. And as usual, want to wish all of you guys the best of luck this weekend in all of your fantasy ventures. And on that note, we will throw it to Mr. Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle.
I never even heard his interview, so I don't know the context in which it was said. I don't know what he said before. I don't know what he said after. So I still haven't seen it. I'm not going to watch it. I don't care, But I've got no ill will towards Jay. There's no feud between me and Jay. I think we lost the game. He said what he said, and we're moving on. That's in the past now.